the main thing in my own experience was figuring out the reason that I'm angry to begin with and what underlying limiting belief it is highlighting. Hey soul family, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. My name is Nicole, and today in this video I want to talk to you about anger and why it is actually a tool that you can use to better yourself and not something to be feared. First of all, I just wanted to say how proud I am of you for clicking on this video, because obviously this topic isn't just something that we're gonna listen to just for fun, let's say, but it's something that you're doing towards working towards your own personal growth. And when you work towards your own personal growth and when you heal yourself, you heal the collective. We are all walking each other home, and I'm so proud of you for being on this journey with me and with everybody else that is on this journey. So congrats, and keep going with your work and your dedication and in your rest and tending to your needs and learning about yourself and learning how to use these tools that we have been given to serve us and to serve humanity and to better all of us, instead of allowing them to be tools to oppress us and keep us stagnant and not growing. And when we're not growing, what is happening? So what even is anger? Anger is an emotion that often comes when our needs are not being met and when our boundaries are being crossed. Anger is a common emotion in society that we all feel, and in different societies and different cultures it is viewed as something different, and the expressions of it can be viewed as acceptable or not. Different expressions are acceptable or not in different cultures. But I find in this culture, the Western culture, I'm in Canada, I don't know about you, but this culture tends to fear anger, and maybe that's just because it's coming from my personal perspective, so maybe it's different from a man's perspective. Obviously I cannot speak to that. And also at the same time, I've spoken to many men as well who either fear their anger and or don't know what to do with it, and or like it's running the show, like they're just exploding on everything. So for me, the way I see it is like there's two poles that you can be at. You can be at the people-pleasing pole where you repress all of your anger and you're terrified of it and so it never comes out, or you could be at the other end, which is where you use anger too frequently and it's always coming out for everything. So we don't want to be at either end. We want to be in the middle where we are healthily addressing the anger and using it as a tool instead of using it to further sabotage our life. And now I just want to read a quote from the book The Dance with Anger by Harriet Lerner, and it says it's a woman's guide to changing the patterns of intimate relationships, but I do feel that there's a lot of tools in here that do apply to everyone. Now I'm going to be 100% honest, I haven't completely read the entire book all the way through yet, but it's something I've gained value from. And even if you don't gain any value from it at all or don't have any interest in reading it, I thought that this definition of anger was extremely relevant and prevalent, and so I wanted to share. Anyways, anger is a signal, and one worth listening to. Our anger may be a message that we are being hurt, that our rights are being violated, that our needs or wants are not being adequately met, or simply that something is not right. Our anger may tell us that we are not addressing an important emotional issue in our lives, or that too much of ourself, our beliefs, values, desires, or ambitions is being compromised in a relationship. Our anger may be a signal that we are doing more and giving more than we can comfortably do or give. Or our anger may warn us that others are doing too much for us at the expense of our own competence and growth. Just as physical pain tells us to take our hand off the hot stove, the pain of our anger preserves the very integrity of ourself. Our anger can motivate us to say no in the ways in which we are defined by others and say yes to the dictates of our own internal self, our inner self. So that was the quote that I wanted to share. And I think it's super important to be able to look at anger as a tool that we can use instead of as something to be feared or like a sign that we are bad or wrong or something else. I came across this article and I found it really interesting because it talks about how anger is expressed and perceived in different cultures. And so I just wanted to go through at least a couple of those cultures and show the differences and then move on from there. So to start, they have the United States first, and I do think that this kind of encompasses like Canada as well. For the United States, the focus is more on like individual expression and like expressing our individual emotions, and that is including anger, and that being able to express it is seen as a sign of authenticity. Now, I do think that this is true, and it kind of contradicts the point that I had just said earlier about in this culture it feels like we're often repressing it. And I think that there's almost like two ways of looking at it. It's like people who are not using it as a tool, or people who are seeing it as something that is bad for them, or basically anybody who is not in this personal growth, like healing, like world will typically see it as like bad or wrong or scary. But anybody in the therapy world or personal growth world will tend to see it more as something just to be expressed. And it even said like in the therapeutic culture, there's a strong emphasis on expressing our emotions and discussing our feelings openly. But obviously this doesn't apply in every scenario and with every person because we're not on the same page. And this article, which I'm going to include in the description if you want to like read more about it, also talks about how anger management programs and things like that are commonly available because the Western society tends to take a more proactive approach to like anger management. The next culture that was on the list was Japan, and I thought it was interesting because their priority is the value of harmony. And as we know, Japan is more of a collectivist culture, whereas the United States and Canada is more of an individualistic culture. So individualistic is focused primarily on the self, on the individual, and a collectivist culture is focused primarily on the collective. So in Japan, maintaining harmony and peace within the collective is often seen as a priority over expressing your own internal anger, and having public displays and outbursts of anger is frowned upon in Japan, according to this article, because I've never been. And this is because having these outbursts obviously would disrupt the social collective. So this means that it is more likely for anger to be expressed in more of like a passive way, in a more indirect way, where people use more of like subtle cues and expressions and tones of voice to convey the fact that they are angry. And in Japan, it is more acceptable to express your anger in private in order to not have any social disruption and not negatively influence the collective, the community, and maintain their dignity. The next culture that was reflected here is the Middle East. The Middle East focuses on honor and respect. In many Middle Eastern countries, focusing on maintaining personal and familial honor is crucial, and in these countries, anger is okay to be expressed if your honor has been threatened. So in these cultures, they have something called respectful anger, where expressing anger is acceptable, but it should be done in a way that maintains the respect for yourself and for others. They also have this little tidbit which I thought was really fascinating about a community focus, where anger may be addressed within the context of the community and where elders and leaders would mediate the conflict. The next culture in this article was a Scandinavian culture, and their focus is on emotional reserve. So countries like Sweden and Norway value having restraint against your emotions. And big explosive displays of anger, like yelling or physical gestures, might be viewed as inappropriate for the social context. And instead of having these big gestures, people in these countries will also tend to have more subtle gestures, like looking away or basically like repressing it, right? In these countries, however, they do value direct communication. And so if you are upset in these countries, it is commonly acceptable to directly communicate these reasons that you're upset in order to get to the bottom of it without a big explosion and in a straightforward and polite way. They have a focus as well on problem solving. So whenever anger does arise, they focus on resolving the issue in a calm and rational manner. The last culture that this article touched on was India, and how they have something called hierarchical expressions. And basically what this means is that while India is a collectivist country and they often prioritize the collective versus the individual individual, there is also a diversity within that culture where it is acceptable to have outbursts of anger at different hierarchies. For instance, children are encouraged not to express the anger because it will cause a disruption, but then it is okay to have anger expressions within your peers. So this article kind of teaches us that cultural norms will determine whether or not anger is viewed as disruptive or bad or negative, or if it's viewed as something else. I don't have the specific details, but I remember someone from a different culture, I don't remember exactly what, maybe like some sort of Spanish, where they displayed their anger in a big loud way and it was encouraged, but that also could have been because of the context. Like maybe someone had passed away, maybe it was more of being acceptable to express grief, and like anger kind of comes with grief as well. So there's also that to consider. So learning about the ways that different cultures express and view anger can help us to understand the perspective and viewpoints of others, especially when we're interacting with different cultures and different people from different backgrounds all the time. And B, I think it's super interesting to learn about these things because just like everything with life, I think that there's a little bit of truth in all of it. And so if we were to kind of pick and choose from all these different ways, then we can make like a quilt of culture, a cultural quilt that becomes the whole truth, if that even makes sense. So like, let me give you an example. So the example I have is that in the Western culture, it is, according to this article, it is seen as okay to like freely express your individual emotions, including anger, and it is seen as like almost a good thing to just do it, but it doesn't really talk about how outbursts of anger can be perceived. But like on the opposite side of things, if you go to Japan, it is completely frowned upon to have like these emotional outbursts. But if we were to take both of those philosophies and kind of meet in the middle, or take like parts of it from here and parts of it from there, like sometimes it's good to express your individual emotions, but then sometimes it's also good to consider the collective and how that might harm the collective. And then we could go take information from another culture, like the Middle East, where having emotional outbursts was acceptable if your honor was disrespected. Or we could also take the perspective from Scandinavian countries, where outbursts are frowned upon, but having open communication is actually good. So I just think that there's a truth in all of it, and it's not healthy to lean too much one way or too much the other way, and that finding a balance between all of it and creating that patchwork or quilt of philosophies and ways to live our life is the most ideal. Like for instance, like being too independent can be detrimental to your health, but also relying too much on other people can also be detrimental to your health. So it's like finding a balance, finding the medium way to implement both these things in your life. Anyways, moving on. Now we're going to talk about more of the psychological conceptualization of the term anger and what it kind of looks like in the psychology world. And so anger is actually a secondary emotion, and it's a protective emotion. And usually, as I had mentioned, it's a sign that we're feeling unsafe, taken advantage of, our needs aren't being met, like we're living in fear, right? That's why we have this anger, because we are underneath it all, we are scared, and therefore we need to come up and protect ourselves from whatever we're facing. And a nice metaphor that I heard from Aubrey Marcus, and I'm not even sure if I'm completely describing it properly in this, but basically it's just like our anger is our fire, and it can burn strong without burning anyone or harming anyone. And fire is actually a tool. We can use it to cook our food, we can use it to provide light and warmth. It's a tool that is necessary for our survival. The problem becomes when we use that fire to make a weapon, and then that's when it harms other people. Otherwise, it's super important to have the anger and to get friendly with the anger and to know your anger. Because if you don't, if anger is something that you are scared of or that you are repressing, then it becomes part of your shadow. And then your shadow can start to act in ways that you consciously don't even agree with. And when we get angry, it is a sign that there's part of us that needs tending to. I know it sounds all woo-woo and airy-fairy, but truly, if we had no meaning attached to whatever situation that we are angry about, we would not be angry about the situation. We are angry because we have attached meaning to the situation. And that doesn't mean that you're bad or wrong. It's just important to look at the reasons that we are angry in the first place. And an example of this, the last time that I was angry, like really angry, it's because I had associated meaning to the behaviors of others. Like if someone treats you poorly, it can be tempting to associate the meaning of their behavior towards you as a sign that there is something inherently wrong with you, or that you're not worthy, or that you've been abandoned, or that you've been betrayed, or anything else, really. Whatever your core wound is, if someone treats you poorly, you will likely experience those feelings come up. Or if you're feeling angry, let's just say. Because if someone treats you poorly and you're not feeling angry, then like, whatever. My whole point, this whole video is about anger. But in reality, the behaviors of other people have absolutely nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. For instance, like bullying on the internet. Like happy people don't go on the internet to try to tear other people down. They may not like what they see on the internet, but it doesn't mean that they have to leave a comment. And just reflect on your own experiences. Like I'm sure you've had experiences where you're in a really good place and you see something on the internet that you really dislike, or it goes against your values, and you're not sitting here thinking like I'm gonna comment, but like think about another time where you've been in kind of a dark place and you see something and it's almost like you're out to like get a fight. You're like, yeah, I'm gonna comment on this because I'm miserable and I just want to spew my miserableness on everyone else. That's the same thing with other people's behaviors. What we have inside is what is reflective of what we are creating on the outside, or what we are offering on the outside. It doesn't mean that the behaviors were right or you deserved them, but like with so many things in life, it's like you can understand that people's behaviors are everything about themselves. You can also understand that if there's part of you that's getting angry at their behaviors, there's something that it is trying to get you to look at. Like there's some sort of healing under the surface there, which is great. It's coming up so that you can look at it. That's awesome. Wonderful. Thank you. Accept that it's there. Accept that it's here to teach you something about yourself, something about your limiting beliefs that are hiding under the surface that you didn't even realize existed. And those are the beliefs that are contributing to your perception of the reason that you're angry in the first place. So when you do find out whatever limiting belief it is bringing up within you, I invite you to challenge that limiting belief by either meditating on it, journaling, doing some exercise, going in nature, stretching, any other like relaxing practices to help you really sink into your body and be there with the emotions. When people say hold space, to me, it just means like to be present in this context. Because maybe hold space could be like hold a container, which is still metaphorical, but to me it means like if it's a group, then we're like holding this container where it's a safe space to share what you need to say, and it's like we're all gonna grow and heal. But anyways, that was a side quest, you know? And then after you figure out what it is trying to teach you, I also invite you to find a safe space to express the anger. Now, there are some studies that show that expressing the anger isn't gonna get rid of it, and it's just gonna perpetuate it. But again, I think that there's a little bit of truth in everything. So yes, I do think that's true if we're stuck in the story about the meaning for what the anger means for us or about us. But I think if we are able to see the story for what it is, the limiting belief, challenge that limiting belief, insert a new belief that's not limiting, and then process any other leftover anger, I don't think that it perpetuates it, at least not in my own experience. And again, I'm just gonna throw this out there. I know it's almost at the end of the video, but I'm not a licensed professional, mental health professional. I do have my own life experience, and I have done so many personal growth courses and practices, and I also have just recently graduated from my psychology program, so I have my bachelor's in psychology, but I'm not a registered health professional. I'm just here, another human being, sharing my stories with you, because other people sharing their stories with me have helped me a lot. And so I just want to be able to do the same thing. But yeah, anyways, there are certain ways that you can channel it. You can be creative in any way that seems fit for you. If it's drawing, painting, if it's like throwing paint at something outside to make that like splash, and also you're getting that physical component. If it's going to a rage room, if it's chopping wood, because then you're kind of getting out the anger and you're being productive. If it's chopping at a log, like you have an axe or a stump and you're just chopping at the stump. If it's writing a song, if it's going really hard on your exercises and blasting that rage music, if it's blasting the rage music in your car and singing at the top of your lungs, if it's doing that in your house and really getting into the feeling and the movement and the rage and moving your body in these ways, whatever ways feel good to your body. Maybe it's screaming into a pillow or screaming into an empty forest. Maybe it's cleaning. Sometimes I rage clean. Maybe it's baking. Maybe it's cooking. Maybe it's singing. Maybe it's just dancing. It has nothing to do with anger, but you still feel it after you've processed it and you kind of just want to get it out. That is kind of what all this is. So maybe it's just dancing, right? Like, it could be none of those things, and it could be something that you already know that you like to do. I'm not here to tell you how to do it. I'm here to offer suggestions based on my own experience and experience from people that I've talked to, and offer you suggestions to help to inspire you. Oh, one thing I saw another girl do was like take a baseball bat and like smash on her bed. The possibilities to release your anger in a healthy way that does not disrupt other people are really endless. The main thing in my own experience was figuring out the reason that I'm angry to begin with, and what underlying limiting belief is highlighting. Anyways, that's all I have today for this video. I hope it was helpful. If you have any ways that you like to channel your anger, or that you like to figure out your limiting beliefs, please share in the comments below. Or if you don't want to comment, send me a message or send me an email, and I would love to chat about these things because I think that they're conversations that need to be had. And yeah, I wish you the best in your healing journey. I'm so grateful that you're here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have the best day ever. I'll see you next time. Bye.